On Monday, Trev Alberts will announce Matt Rhule as Nebraska's next head coach, and whether you like the decision or not, he was the number one target for a reason. 11 years as a position coach, 4 years as an offensive coordinator, and 10 years as a head coach at Temple, Baylor, and in the NFL is more than enough experience to give this administration faith that he can turn things around. Fans have voiced their concerns, and some are upset that it wasn't Mickey, but I full-heartedly believe, and I'm not just saying this to be positive, that Matt Rhule is the right coach to bring Nebraska back to national relevancy. So today, we're going to take a closer look at this hire, and I'll break down why it makes sense, how we got here, what it means for the future, and what to expect with Mickey Joseph. But what's up, guys? I'm Connor Hayden, and this is Corn Crazed. If you're a fan of Nebraska or the Big Ten, make sure you hit the subscribe button below so you don't miss any of the videos I post. And if you're a fan of the new hire, hit the like button now and help us get to 1,000. But now, let's get into it.
Yet across midfield. Touchdown, Nebraska! Omar Manning.
We did this in our live stream yesterday, but I think it's important we address the Mickey Joseph situation since he's done such a great job keeping the team together and absolutely deserves to be a big part of this next staff. As much as I love the guy, and I'm sure you do too, Mickey's resume just wasn't strong enough to give him the job since the stakes are so high. It'd be one thing if Nebraska had just come off some winning seasons and he had been a part of that winning program for years before just to pick up where things left off, but that's not how it played out. He's in prime position to work towards becoming a Power 5 head coach in these next few years, but I'd be shocked if a big school offered him this cycle. My expectation is that Rhule is going to try to keep him in the same role that he was given last year, but we got no way of knowing what Mickey thinks about the hire yet, or if he has any hard feelings since it doesn't sound like he ever got an interview. I feel confident in saying this. If Mickey isn't part of this staff next year, I'd expect most of the receivers he recruited and a few of the guys from this upcoming class to hit the portal and follow him wherever he goes. We already saw Trey announce that he's going pro, and I'm going to assume if Mickey was named head coach, there was a good chance that he would have stayed. He didn't walk at senior day, which was a telling sign, and my understanding based on conversations I've had with multiple recruits is that the staff was selling an idea that Mickey had a good chance of being named head coach, and a lot of players were hopeful for that. Either way, it doesn't matter because we're on to phase 2, and that's figuring out which coaches are going to be retained and where Rhule looks to fill out those remaining spots. Today was a fantastic final day of the regular season, and I spent my entire day on that couch watching every game and appreciating the last bit of college football before we get into the bowl games. Jacob sent me a big win he had on Brothrow today. He ended up taking South Carolina plus 14 and money line, so he ended up winning $98 on that game alone. And I love seeing all the subscribers in the Corn Craze group winning money with us on Brothrow. So if you haven't had a chance to check it out yet, you can head over to brothrow.com/GBR to sign up for free from any state as long as you're 18 plus, and you can start betting on games with us. I went 16-4 on my picks today for another massive Saturday, and I already jumped on some NFL games for tomorrow. Brothrow has been the main sponsor for our channel, and I love using this site, so if you end up with some wins, make sure you let me know what you hit, and maybe I'll have to start riding with you. There were only a few coaches that were reported to be in the running for this job, or at least only a few who were willing to listen to offers. Trev met with Lance Leipold, and it sounds like Dave Doran, Chris Kleiman, Luke Fickell, and Bronco Mendenhall were all considered and given a call. And the most interesting name, who I don't think Trev gave much thought to, is Lane Kiffin. And I'm not sure he was a good fit for Nebraska or the Big Ten based on his history, like I've talked about plenty of times before, but it feels like he might have jumped on this opportunity had it been offered. We know Kiffin has a tie to Nebraska with his dad being a former assistant under Devaney and Osborne, and my understanding is that he wanted the Nebraska job after either Solich or Callahan was let go. I just can't remember which one. But he's posted multiple tweets insinuating that he's not 100% happy at Ole Miss. Like the time he compared their stadium experience to a high school game just 2 weeks after Frost was let go. Or yesterday when he tweeted this just 3 minutes after Matt Rhule was announced. Don't think of the things you didn't get after praying. Think of the countless blessings God gave you without asking. I'm not a genius, but I can read between the lines, and my guess is that Lane's a little hurt that Nebraska doesn't love him back. It doesn't matter though, because we're looking forward and we got to kill the idea that any of these coaches would have been better picks. Leipold's team doesn't play defense. Kleiman's never been to a New Year's Six Bowl or finished with more than 8 wins until today. Luke Fickell's never been a head coach at a Power 5 school. Mendenhall struggled in the ACC, and Dave Doran's NC State's version of Bo Pelini. All these coaches come with flaws. Nobody's going to be perfect. And what we've learned this year is that it's more about finding the right fit than it is just paying for the guy with the best record. Just ask Texas A&M, who hired Jimbo Fisher and won't even make a bowl game in year 5. And TCU, who landed a coach that only won 9 games twice in 12 years before leading TCU to an undefeated season today. I want to talk about the positives to Matt Rhule and give you something to think about regarding the flaws that have been brought up over and over. Quick pros that you see all the time. Number 1, he's a builder. His programs always take steps forward, not back. Every year his college teams won more games than the last, and the trajectory pointed up. 2, he understands the importance of having a good line. You can find a bunch of content online where Rhule preaches toughness and winning at the line of scrimmage. He spent 4 years in college and the NFL as an offensive and defensive line coach, so he knows what success looks like on both sides of the ball. 3, he's a championship competitor. In 4 seasons at Temple, his team won the American Championship game twice, and in his 3rd year at Baylor, they made the Big 12 championship game and lost to Oklahoma in overtime. Those are all good and for sure important, but we need to talk about the pro that matters the most, and the one that I think is the reason Trev wanted to hire him. Matt Rhule is a CEO. The Nebraska football programs lacked structure, a disciplinarian, someone who cares about the little things, and someone who demands excellence in all aspects of life as a student athlete or as a college football staff member. Mickey's mentioned in pressers that he saw things that didn't line up with how championship programs are run. And once Frost left, we heard about plenty of issues running through that facility because of his management style. I've talked about the importance of finding the right CEO for this job because being the head coach is less about the X's and O's and more about overseeing your players, the massive staff, working with boosters, recruiting, and everything else that goes into running a program and building one outside of the 12 Saturdays in the fall. Frost was a great X's and O guy. He was an elite coordinator before he was a head coach, and at a smaller school like UCF that played lesser competition and had less to manage since it was a smaller business, he got away with not having to run that operation as tight as he needed to at Nebraska. Rhule's the opposite. He's less XO. He leaves that to his coordinators. He's never been a play caller, and his priorities are number 1, strategic recruiting based on analytics and finding diamonds in the rough with high NFL potential based on size, speed, and intelligence. 2, leadership development. He believes talent wins games, but teams can only be great with outstanding leadership across the board. And 3, he builds out and he's in charge of executing the plan. Matt Rhule hasn't stumbled into 2 conference championships, 11 wins in the Big 12, an NFL head coaching job, and now one of the biggest college jobs in the country. The guy builds out well-constructed plans in thorough detail, outlining step by step what he expects from his players and his staff, his process for how to get his program from point A to point B, and essentially his manifesto for how his team will not only prepare for games, but how they're going to play in them. The most successful businesses, sports teams, and just people in general are those with strong leadership who hold themselves or their teams accountable and demand excellence as they go through their process. As JD Piquel from On3, who played for him, mentioned in his video, Rhule won't let his team get away with wearing the wrong socks, so imagine how much of a stickler he is about the details in practice or meetings. Let me address these 2 cons that people keep bringing up. Number 1, his head coaching record in college is 47-43. Although this is a fact, and you know how much I love facts, this number does not tell the whole story. Sure, he's barely above 500, but that number is being held back by the fact that he didn't stay at either of those 2 schools long enough to make up for his first terrible seasons at each stop. His trajectory was going up, and had he stayed at Temple or Baylor, he could have won 9 or 10 more games at either of those schools, no problem. 2, he didn't beat a top 25 team while he was at Baylor. First off, he was at Baylor. They're a middle-of-the-pack Big 12 program who can't recruit as well as 3 of the other schools in Texas. In his first 2 years, he was building his team and wasn't expected to win many games against elite competition. In year 3, he had a valid excuse because they only played 2 ranked teams. OU made the playoff and won that game twice by 1 score, and Georgia, who finished in the top 3, was further along in the Kirby Smart era, and they're obviously a more dominant program. That's going to change at Nebraska, and it could happen fast. He'll have more resources to hire a better staff. NIL and name brand is going to help him in recruiting to get better players than he could get at Baylor. And Nebraska's already shown these last 2 years that they can compete with anybody. They just lack the CEO who could get the culture fixed. I have no idea what to expect in terms of turnaround time or how good this first recruiting class is going to look, but based on this year, which I'd consider the worst one in a long time, I think Nebraska is close to getting back to 7 wins. With no offensive line, a broken culture, plenty of off the field issues, and a staff missing 2 key pieces, this team beat Iowa, they lost to Wisconsin by 1 point, could have beaten Minnesota with a healthy quarterback, and should have beaten Georgia Southern if Bill Busch would have taken over 2 weeks earlier. That would have been enough for 7 wins. That's how close we were. I think 6 wins next year is a reasonable expectation given the fact we play some pretty average schools and this team's going to return some pretty solid players. I'm hesitant to make too many predictions without knowing who comes back specifically and what coaches are retained or hired, but I'm confident in saying I feel like Trev made the right choice. He decided to hire the guy who Nebraska needs, not who Nebraska wants. But I want to know what you think, so let me know in the comments below. Are you willing to give this new guy a chance, or are you still annoyed that Trev made this decision? Is there a coach out there, other than Urban Meyer, who you think could have done a better job? And will Mickey end up in Lincoln next year, or has that ship sailed? I'm pumped to hear what he has to say on Monday, and I'll for sure have a video to make after that presser. But until next time, thank you for being here, and I'll see you in the next one. Go Big Red.